So because I'm kind of new in my role, Brian has asked me before to give a message. And it's always been over last year when he was gone, it was like, no, not, not that I said, I'm willing to do it, but it's just not the time. For some, in my spirit, I just knew it wasn't right. But when he asked me this time, it was a very clear yes. And his suggestion was that I just share my my walk of faith story. So for me, I thought I love that because it's an opportunity for those who don't know me to know a little bit about me. I didn't come with a joke, but I came with an amusing anecdote of when I first came to McFarland UCC. I don't know if it was spring or summer of 2020, somewhere around there, but kind of lurking, doing morning devotions, but around, I think it was Halloween. I think we were doing church via Zoom again or something, but tune in and Brian has a Star Trek uniform on. He looks just like Jean-Luc Picard, and I'm a nerd. I love Star Trek and Star Wars and all of that. So I just thought, I think this is the place for me. I think I might fit in here. So I think I was just starting participating in morning devotions around that same time. And one of the first mornings, somebody brings something to read, share. It might be a portion of a book, it might be a poem, variety of things. We discuss it and then we close with prayer. Well, Brian goes to start the prayer at the end of this, and I swear he starts the prayer saying, Obi-Wan. My hearing isn't what it used to be. So I realized, he said, Holy One. But now every time he says Holy One, I laugh and think Obi-Wan. Life is fun when you're easily amused, too. I just say it. I grew up in a split church-going family. We were part of a lot of people haven't heard of the Nazarene Church, but that's the church I grew up in, which is a pretty kind of fundamentalist, evangelical sort of vein. And my dad didn't go to church, but we all went. Dad was a cheester, Christmas and Easter. Yeah, so, but because he grew up with a Nazarene pastor, he'd had a lot of religion shoved down his throat. And he had an idea of what it was to be a Christian, and it was about needing to be perfect and do it all right. And I didn't realize, I think, how much of that I picked up. But the great thing about the Nazarene Church was I really did learn a lot about the Bible, and the focus was a loving God. There's a little fire and brimstone thrown in there, but but overall, and it was about a personal relationship with your God. And I went to church camp every summer, and in fact, I still have a couple of friends that I met when I was 10 at church camp. We were pen pals for many years, and now we're Facebook friends. And so in my early teens, at camp, in the evangelical church, there's being saved and making a decision for Christ and inviting Jesus into your heart and saying, you're committing to this. And I did that, and I felt it was very deep and meaningful to me. And I really did try to, and did live and walk that out. And I was by this time, nobody else in the family went to church except me. I kept going to church. I read my Bible. I was, in leadership in the youth group and, did a lot with church, but it wasn't just about the place. It wasn't about services. It really was a very deep, intimate thing for me. Well, then it was the late 70s, and I was a teenager. And this is where I see that I picked up some of my dad's stuff, because those of you who were around, there was a lot of sex and drugs and rock and roll. The 70s, right? And I think I had this idea I couldn't do it perfectly anymore. I wasn't around people in church who talked about real issues and things they were struggling with. And so I just thought, that's really nice, but I saw no way to bring that together. So I pretty much just walked away. And I think in walking away, there was a part of me that thought that was really nice, but it's not real world. I didn't have instruction on how to walk that out or people to walk it with. So that whole life led me, instead of going away to college, I went away to rehab at age 20. So, which was a great thing. I had my first, just to back up a little bit, I struggled with depression from the time I hit puberty at 11. And so my faith was, I think, part of how I dealt with that also. But I had my first suicide attempt as a freshman in high school. And then I had a very serious, stranger found me as a pulseless non-breather in the street, and I still alive. So I think God had a plan, perhaps. But I ended up being introduced to the idea that perhaps I might have a problem with alcohol and drugs. So I went through treatment and immersed myself in 12-step, and I've been sober 42 and a half years now, and super grateful. It changed my life, and as a result, I've really been able to influence other people's lives in a really positive way, instead of hurting the people I cared about, right? So, but what I went into 12-step with, they're very much, it's a spiritual program, but not a religious one. And you make a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand Him. And the whole rest of the thing is walking that out. What does it mean to turn my will and my life over, my thinking, my actions? And you know what? I was all in there too, except I truly, it's like, God, I want whatever you want for me, except Christianity, because that doesn't work. And I really just felt like I truly was surrendered, and God lead me. I mean, it was again, spirituality, my connection with higher power was critical to me. It was really important. And that was my sobriety for 20 years. And so about 7 or 8 years into sobriety, I got married, I had my first son, and then I had my second son 3.5 years later. And then I was getting ready to get divorced, and we'll just go on the speed track here for the whole story. But as I had my kids and I was facing being a single parent, all of a sudden I remembered all the things that church provided for our family in terms of community, having other adults who cared and were plugged into kids, learning about God. Just all these things that had been really valuable that I think I had been blind to, or I wasn't really willing to acknowledge them. And so when my kids were little, I just thought I really need to heal this thing about organized religion. I just had a thing. I just, hypocrites, people trying to control other people and their choices and blah, blah, blah. So I found a church. I started going to Unity Church of Madison. Their subtitle was The Church of Practical Christianity at the time. And that was great. Brought my kids. It was really a very open, accepting, loving place. There was a lot that I loved about it. But ultimately, I don't know, several years in, I had this, I wanted to go deeper. I wanted more. The addict in me lives, but I just wanted more God. I wanted to kind of go deeper, and it felt to me at the time like, I don't know, I was drawn to wanting more black and white for some reason. I don't know what that was, but so I started hearing about, a couple of friends were going to a church and hearing about some of the pastor's messages, and I went with a couple of times. On weekends I didn't have my kids. And I'm still very much no Christianity. Full in on God. I want you to be in charge of my life, but finally, there was, I don't know, after a few months of going to this other church, which non-denominational, fundamentalist, but it spoke something to me, and the worship music just took me away. I could get, when Bryan was talking, I think it was last week, about the 4 types of spirituality, I could so relate. Because I'm more like the mystical thing of experiencing God is so key to me. It's not a head. There's parts of it that are head. There's parts of it that are heart, but it's also really experiential to me. And I got that there. Part of the problem for those years that I was part of that was that I'm very liberal politically, and so I was very different than the people in those settings. I was at at least 2 different churches, kind of longer term, 2, 3. We had a church merge in there, and I loved the power of God that I felt, the presence of God that I experienced there. But ultimately, really, the church I was going to, it was a small church. It kind of fell apart. So Lynn and I had been going to church there, and so we were talking about trying other churches. And I said, I've always wanted to go to McFarland UCC because my sister she lived in the early 80s, she lived in McFarland. And she went to McFarland UCC, and I just remember liking what I heard about them being kind of like social justice activity, right? And so I said, I've always wanted to try that. And then talking to Lisa Ludwig, who I knew, turns out this is where she came. And so Lynn and I came, and probably Zoom at first because it was 2020. But that opening statement, it was like, oh. And to come to a church and feel like I am truly with my people. and to find a community that is loving and kind and warm and welcoming and active in the things and wanting to, like, outraged by the same things I was. I don't kind of join on the negativity thing, but it's like to have a passion. Maybe outrage isn't the word, but to feel love for the same things and to see a vision of, like, who Jesus was and what he would want, what he would do, that is more in alignment with what I believed. So the other thing about UCC, I remember hearing their ads, and the thing of God is still speaking. Really just, that spoke to me, because in my life, as I said, experiential stuff with God has been huge. And I've gotten up and shared a couple of them where, there was the time God sent me flowers. That was awesome. When I went to buy the house I'm currently in, I wasn't going to buy the house because I thought it was too much money. I wasn't going to buy the house. I'm walking through the house and I hear a voice within me that says, "You're going to lead women's groups here." I'm like, okay. And so I, in faith, walked that out, bought the house, been able to afford it, and hosted a lot of women's groups for 7 or 8 years. And things that I wanted to dig into when I talked about, like, how do you walk out all these areas of our life with your faith in mind and have it be a joyful thing and not a buzzkill, if you will, So I think that, for me, God is still speaking. And I just wanted to share one last experience that I had. She is now 7. My niece, Jackie, who just has a really special place in my heart, got married, this great guy, and anyway, when I found out, and she told me she was pregnant with her first, little Abby, I had a swelling of love come over me that was, oh my God, I love this baby so much. I don't even know who they are, and I don't care. I don't care, like, boy, girl, what, I just had this wave of love. And then I heard that same voice say, "That's how I feel about you." And those are the things that, I want you all to know that. Like, that's the way God feels about each one of us, right? Excited for who you are. And it doesn't matter what that looks like or what your preferences are, right? So thanks for being a warm and welcoming place. And my story continues because God's still talking and I'm still very eager to listen. So thank you. We're going to move on to our closing hymn. Hymn number, I think, 571.